Hey everybody, so let's go over some Abg Tic Tac Toe. I saw some things posted online. Students are having some trouble with the Abg content, so this is just a quick review. Signs and symptoms associated with hypoxia. So this is not something I'm going to go over that was part of your oxygenation lecture, but things to keep in mind. Okay, so aren't all the pH values technically alkalotic? Yes. So if you strictly were thinking from a pH, strip, if you understand pH values, then every value greater than 7 would be considered alkalotic. But for human physiology, we look at a very narrow scale. So for ABGs, acid is anything less than 7.35. Normal is 7.35 to 7.45, and base or alkalosis is greater than 7.45. Okay, so you do have to memorize a few values in order to understand ABGs. So normal pH is between 7.35 and 7.45. PaCO2, which is partial pressure of carbon dioxide, is the levels are 35 to 45. And bicarb, that's the HCO3, is 22 to 26. And those numbers might be slightly different on the bicarb depending on the text, but mid-20s, let's put it that way. For purposes of ABG interpretation, you want to think of lungs as respiratory and kidneys as metabolic, okay? And we also want to think of CO2 as being from the lungs and bicarb from the kidneys, all right? So when we're looking at bicarb, we're looking at our metabolism, and we're looking at PaCO2, we're looking at our respiratory function. All right, so again, values less than 7.35 are considered acidotic. Values greater than 7.45 are considered alkalotic, and values in between are considered normal. All right. So again, Pa means partial pressure of CO2. So carbon dioxide, 35 to 45 millimeters of mercury. So our body controls CO2 levels through respirations, right? And our body can, if it detects too much acid, it can actually regulate respirations to get rid of additional CO2 or hold on to it. So carbon dioxide is made into an acid by the body, right? Okay, so too much acid, your body will increase the respiratory rate to get rid of it through expiration. Bicarb can adjust, can be decreased or increased, but it takes the kidneys a lot longer for that adjustment to happen than it does for the lungs to adjust. So our respiratory drive will correct a acidosis much quicker, okay? Same thing, too little acid, your body will slow down the respiratory rate and hold on to CO2. CO2 retention. Again, bicarb levels will decrease, but this takes more time. Okay, so bicarb, normal level 22 to 26 millimoles per liter. So it's regulated by the kidneys, okay? So we consider it metabolic. It's a natural base, and so it's also considered a base for ABG interpretation. It takes way longer for your kidneys to correct an acid-base imbalance than for the lungs, all right? But they both work in conjunction with each other, all right? Remember that when you have patients with renal failure, that sometimes they'll have trouble with this. Okay, so here's a sample ABG using the tic-tac-toe method. So we have a pH of 7.29, a partial pressure of CO2 of 50, or a PaCO2 of 50, and a bicarb level of 25. So using our numbers from below, remember normal pH and what our normal levels are for CO2 and bicarb, we know that a pH of 7.29 is an acid. All right. Now for our PaCO2, looking at our numbers, if it's less than 35, we consider that a base, and if it's greater than 45, we would consider that an acid. So a PaCO2 of 50 is acid, okay? And then we're going to look at a bicarb of 25. Well, actually that falls within the normal range, so that's normal. So tic-tac-toe, we see that we definitely have an acidosis, and then we need to see who caused it. So who's in the column with us? Well, that's the CO2, and remember that's going to be lungs, which means it's respiratory. So the answer is respiratory acidosis. All right, next problem. We have a pH of 7.5. So that's way over in the base column, right? PaCO2 of 50. So when our CO2 goes up, that means more acid, so that's acidotic. And a bicarb of 30. So the higher the base, the more base we have. Okay. Tic-tac-toe, 3 in a row. We have a, definitely we have an alkalosis. And who's to blame? Well, who's in the column with us? Well, it's bicarb. So that's a metabolic alkalosis. Okay. Now we have a pH of 7.36. Well, that's a normal pH. We have a PaCO2, that's within normal ranges. And we have a bicarb. That's within normal ranges. So, lo and behold, we have normal ABGs. Once in a while you have to have a normal, right? Okay. Now, we have a pH of 7.38. That's normal. We have a PaCO2 that's high, so that's an acid. And we have a bicarb that's high, so that's a base. Okay, so what's going on? All right. When we have a normal pH but abnormal other levels, that means there's some kind of compensation going on. So we're going to split the hairs a little bit on here, and we're going to consider that anything below the smack dab in the middle of 7.40, acid or base. So we're going to change this a little bit, all right? So our pH is 7.38, so that's less than 7.4. So we're going to go ahead and move that pH over to the acid column, get it off of there, all right? Now, when we do our tic-tac-toe, we're going to see that what we have is a compensated acidosis. And who's in the column with us? Well, it's CO2, so it's a compensated respiratory acidosis. So what's happening in the body? We have a high level of CO2, and the body hasn't been able to blow that off. So what did the kidneys do? They upped their game and they raised bicarb to the level that the pH is now normal. I'm sure the patient isn't doing that good, but this could be someone like your chronic COPD or that kind of thing.